Ni hao, 我是 Eric. Welcome to What Do You Know About China? And this is our second video that we've made in this series. I'm here with the distinguished scholar and economist, Professor David Xia, who is a native of China. Now these videos are designed primarily for English-speaking people who wish to know more about China and Chinese culture, but also for some of you native Chinese speakers out there who might be interested in hearing this interview in English. This will also be for you. So today our topic, David, is Chinese food. And this is a very interesting topic, I think, and something of interest to a lot of people. So maybe we could start out by talking about what are the staple foods of China, the most important foods.
Okay, I would say the southern part of China and northern part of China. Basically, northern part of China, they eat wheat flour. So they made like a steamed bread, we call mantou. Then also the steamed stuffed buns, that means baozi.
Baozi, right.
Some vegetables, some meat inside the buns.
Sure.
In southern part of China, people eat paddy rice. So all kind of, basically it's made in China, but sometimes they import nowadays from Japan, Thailand, Vietnam, and other parts of the world, and maybe nowadays from US.
Yes, of course the Southeast Asian countries are particularly known for their rice cultivation. And so now what other sorts of foods are very commonly eaten in China in terms of meat or vegetables? Any things that are particularly popular across the entire country?
Yeah, in old times, people, they don't have much food, they don't have much meat, so basically at the time they eat more vegetables than meat. So some people say in general Chinese are vegetarians, but that's not true. It doesn't mean they don't like eat meat. But for the meat, we mentioned more, it's a focus on pork rather than beef. But nowadays people have more and more beef and maybe some other things. But in southern part, people like to eat fish, all kinds of fish, and people are living close to river, close to sea, they eat more fish.
Well, yeah, from knowing David sometime, I know that you like to eat fish at least once a day.
Yeah.
So it seems to be very common.
You know why?
Why?
Because I come from the southern part of China.
That's right. Okay, very, very good explanation.
And also there's one point. Some people say if the people like to eat fish all the time, that means his brain is maybe more bright.
I see, okay. So now, another thing I think people might like to know is where do Chinese folks buy their food? Do they go to the supermarket? Do many Chinese still cultivate their own food or their own livestock? Tell us a little bit about that. Or do they go to restaurants?
Yeah, basically people in old days go to the open air markets. That's like a free market. Whenever the farmers, you can sell their vegetables and grains, all things or stuff that people they need. But since Communist Party took the power in 1949, it's this planned economy, and then the state-owned stores, they gave the supply of everything. And not only they supply those things, but you should have the kind of a coupon. You should have a kind of portion. That means you should have some quotas. You don't have, even you have money, that doesn't mean you can buy as much food as you like. That should, based on each person, for adult, a strong man, maybe every month he got 30 jing, that's 15 kilos of the grain quotas, only for himself. Otherwise, if he eat more, that means he has nothing to eat next month.
Right.
So he cannot share with other people. Otherwise, he won't feed himself.
Interesting. Well, now even in a country like the United States, which of course is a very prosperous country overall, there's a good amount of food insecurity, and that means people who don't always have enough to eat and are not sure where they're going to always get their next meal. Would you say there's a good amount of food insecurity in China today?
In old days. Nowadays, in general, people, I think, they have the sufficient supply.
Yeah.
If you don't have the grain, you can go to the market, supermarkets, and I mean, in old days, people can only go to the grain store to purchase a grain.
Right.
But nowadays, you can go to a free market, a supermarket, whatever you need. You can purchase even online nowadays.
Yeah. And do the Chinese people like to cook a lot?
Sure.
Yeah.
In old days, people spend at least 2 hours per day, maybe sometimes 3 or 5 hours on cooking, because that time, people have to start the stove burning coals or coal balls.
Sure.
So you should make all of the stuff before you can do anything. Nowadays, it's easy. Just a gas stove, you turn it on, and you use maybe electric stoves, so much easier. So in general, it takes much shorter time to prepare a meal.
Right. And how about people going out to restaurants? Is that a very common thing in China? Because I know in the United States there was actually just a story recently that said that for the first time more Americans now eat the majority of their meals outside of the home in restaurants than they do cook their meals at home. And I'm wondering what the balance is like in China. Do people tend to eat more at home, or do they go more to restaurants?
It depends. In old days, people generally eat at home. But nowadays, people have more money to spend.
Yes.
So I would say in some family, probably every week, at least once a week or twice a week. For some young people, maybe eat every day outside.
Right.
So nowadays they have some fast food stores in China as well, like
McDonald's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. When I was in China last time, I noticed there's quite a few McDonald's and KFCs and other American fast food restaurant chains. What did Chinese people think of those sorts of restaurants, those American chains?
Okay, 3 decades ago, at that time people think that, it's something new, it's something fantastic, especially for those young people and kids. I remember my son, when he was a small kid, he asked for a kind of a reward. When he got some good remarks or points in his examination, we reward him with a meal in KFC or some other stores, fast food. But nowadays people learn that it's a junk food.
It's junk food, right.
So it's not that popular now, like 3 decades or 2 decades ago.
Sure.
But young people like it. It's fast and easy.
Yes. So now, can we break down the regions of China a little bit more? So you mentioned there's a sort of northern style, and that tends to focus on, what did you call baozi? Baozi,
mantou.
Baozi, mantou, and the southern region, which is more rice-based.
Dishes.
Are there other regional distinctions we can talk about as far as food?
Well, nowadays is not that strict distinction.
Right.
I mean, the people in the south, they can eat also baozi, mantou, and in north, they can also eat the rice. That's no big difference. But only for those people who have the traditional tastes, they prefer have a more wheat flour than rice, or they prefer have more rice than wheat flour.
Yes.
So that's quite different. And also for the dishes, when you say dishes, actually in China we have so many different kind of styles. Actually we have at least 8 schools of dishes. That's called the 八大菜系. It doesn't mean only 8. That means more than dozen. But 8 most famous school of dishes.
Can you tell us about a couple of those?
Yeah, for instance, the biggest one probably 粤菜. 粤 means Guangdong, Cantonese. Cantonese food, traditional maybe is the number 1, the biggest one, because the location, I mean the variety, and what I mean is locations in the whole world. It's very widespread. And then you say 川菜. Sichuan.
Oh, Sichuan.
Yeah, so
right.
For shortened term is 川菜. 川菜 means Sichuan style dishes.
Yes. And now, what is the characteristic of Sichuan dishes? What are they like?
People like it because it's hot and spicy.
Hot and spicy.
So whenever you see hot and spicy, people say, "Oh, that's a 川菜."
Right. Okay.
But actually, 湘菜, Xiang means Hunan, Hunan province. It's a shortened it's a one word. Xiang means Hunan. So when you have the xiang dishes, it also means very hot. Not necessarily spicy, but sometimes they have spicy too.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other flavorings that Chinese people like to use in their food? So of course, hot peppers, chili peppers. Are there other flavorings that are very common? Ginger.
Yes. Many condiments.
Condiments.
They have different kinds of Western and Eastern combination.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even the vigors, they use
Vinegar,
some different cinnamon. Or some other
garlic, I'm sure.
Yeah,
of course.
Garlic is good. Yeah, that's the many different kinds of dishes. Also, I mentioned some hot and spicy food.
Yes.
Some maybe a little bit light taste, like Hangzhou cai.
Hangzhou cai.
Hangzhou is a very famous capital city, beautiful city. West Lake, perhaps you heard that.
Yeah. Right.
So Hangzhou cai and Hu cai. Hu means Shanghai.
Okay.
Hu cai.
So now, if you're an English-speaking person in China and you go into a restaurant and you don't want your dish to be too spicy, what do you say? You say wei la.
Not too hot. Wei la. Maybe a little bit hot.
Just a little bit spicy.
Zong la, medium. Right? and da la.
Da la, if you really want the
very hot.
Yes.
And then you say 变态辣. Extremely hot.
Oh no, your head will explode then.
Yeah. And also we have a kind of a school called Hui Cai. That's Anhui province. That's my hometown.
Oh, right.
Hui Cai. Hui Cai is at old time, in old days, people say Hui Cai, they have specific feature. It's more oil. Oil is not only vegetable oil, but also means the pork oil or pork grease. That's that looks like a white paste, something like the paste. Yeah, so that some people always use that. Even they don't eat any dishes. They use 1 spoon of pork oil or pork grease into the rice. Then you eat.
And that's it.
Yeah, a lot of oil.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of protein in there probably as well.
Yeah, because old days people they don't have much food and much meats. Instead they eat more oil or grease.
Yeah.
So for that wheat dishes, that means they have the feature 重油重色. That means emphasize on oil or grease and also emphasize on the color. The color looks more deep and or red.
Yes.
It looks more attractive.
Interesting. Now, this gets to an interesting question. It's been said about Chinese eaters that they'll eat anything with 4 legs except for a table. And that they'll eat anything that flies except for an airplane. Chinese people like to eat a lot of exotic foods. Can you talk a little bit about some of the sort of exotic specialties in China?
Well, I don't want to offend anyone,
Sure.
but in Canton, the Cantonese eat more varieties, all kinds of food, or animals, snakes, cat, rat, or mouse. It sounds strange, right? But people, they make it so delicious.
Right.
Maybe in the poor years, old days, poor people, they try to eat everything. And also they have the piglet, roast piglet, 烤乳猪.
烤乳猪.
That means a very small pigs, they roast it.
So now, David, I know you spent many years living in Beijing. Beijing has some specialties that they're known for. Beijing Kaoya, for instance. Hot pot as well, Hoguo. Could you maybe talk a little bit about Beijing food and what that's like?
Well, I would say the old Beijing food, that's very old specialties like 芥末墩儿, 豆汁儿, 驴打滚儿. That's some specific Beijing local food.
Baker's chicken.
But nowadays, not many people like that. Actually, in Beijing nowadays, there's more varieties of all kind of foods in China.
Right.
Since it is capital, right?
Sure.
So when you mentioned the Peking roast duck, yeah, that's one of the specialties.
Right. Now, tell us a little bit about hot pot, because there's a special etiquette around eating hot pot, right? It's people get together as a group, as a family, and it's really about sharing a meal. Tell us a little bit about that tradition.
Well, hot pot, I think that's basically located in Sichuan province, Chongqing 火锅 and Chengdu 火锅. Then it has widespread, I mean, it's very popular in China, in southern part of China and northern part of China. Everybody like a hot spot, especially in winters. Some people, they eat in the most, I mean, in August and July, the hottest day, they eat hot food that say 以热攻热, 以毒攻毒. That means you feel hot, so hot, then you eat more hot food. Then after that, you have the big sweating.
Right, which is good for your health, I suppose.
Yeah, so...
But so with hot pot, you're not supposed to eat that by yourself. That's a social faux pas. You should eat it with a group of people always.
Yeah, that looks more, you see, I mean, the atmosphere getting exciting.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I noticed when I was in China, I happen to be left-handed, so I naturally use my chopsticks with my left hand, and I got a lot of strange looks, and people said stuff to me. They said, you should be using your right hand. Is that common in China?
Yeah. That's most. I think the most adults or parents would tell their children it's better to use the right hands rather than the left hands. But later on, people found you can never change their attitudes. I mean, some people they were born leftists.
Yes, exactly.
So for some, according to some research, the left brain is in the, I would say, masters of language skill or maybe good remembrance. So people, they focus on the left brain, they memorize more things.
Interesting.
So some people say it's good to train both of your hands. That means you have both your brain.
Both sides of your brain. Yeah. Interesting. So I wanted to talk a little bit about drinking culture in China as well. Is the drinking culture similar to the United States? Would you say people drink about the same or less, more? What kinds of alcohol do people drink in China usually?
Well, I think the longest history for the wine in China, it actually is not wine, it's a liquor. It's made of the grain, sometimes it's sweet potatoes. It's thousands of years of the production of liquor. So in many famous places like Sichuan and Guizhou and Anhui, those provinces are maybe the best for making the liquors. And so for some, the cave, they have some barrier of the old wines, the liquors, for more than 1,000 years.
Wow.
So that's good, very good.
So when I was in Guangzhou, people kept feeding me rice wine, and that seemed to be one of the specialties down there. Do people also drink a lot of beer and sort of more European style wine?
Yes, we start the beer production, or maybe consumption first, in the year, I believe it's 1998, something like that. But it became a little more popular in Beijing in the year 1905 by Danish, the Carlsberg. At that time, they have the Carlsberg in Beijing. So that's a long history. If you go to visit Carlsberg's headquarters in Copenhagen, then you find they have the museum. There's a history about their marketing in Beijing more than 100 years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And of course, in Qingdao, they're famous for their pijiu, their beer as well.
Yeah. A little bit later.
A little bit later on.
Yeah.
And how about, are there wine growing regions in China as well?
Also wine, I think, start also in Qingdao, in Yantai, and other places. So nowadays, China made also good wines.
Yes.
But most people believe a French wine, Italian wine, American, California wine, Spanish, and maybe Chile.
So would you say it's safe to say that China has a tremendous variety of food and liquors, and it's just a feast of many different colors and flavors?
when you say the wines, we will add something like 黄酒.
黄酒.
黄酒 it literally says yellow wine or yellow. It is yellow wine. It's basically in Zhejiang province or Shanghai. It's not that strong, but some people say 后劲儿大. That means after effect, it became very obvious. When maybe you drank a lot of it, at first you don't think it's much, and then 1 hour, 2 hours later you feel something. It's very heavy.
Right.
Yeah. So the 黄酒 is good for people's health, and also it's good in winter time. And sometimes you need to make it warm. And also with some other thing, 话梅, it's a plum, sour plum. And also you put something like 姜丝, ginger, into the 黄酒. So you drink it.
I see, and that's good for your health.
Yeah.
So last question, I wanted to ask you about tea and coffee, because I know traditionally China is a tea drinking country. I'm personally a big fan of 绿茶, green tea, which comes from China. Today, do Chinese people still drink a lot of tea, or are they becoming more of a coffee drinking people?
It depends. I think young people drink more coffee, or if they work in the big cities, especially when they work for a foreign company, they eat more coffee. Nowadays, the young people, they get more close to the Western culture.
Yes.
For Christmas or Valentine's Day and Easter and many the Western holidays they will celebrate. So they eat and drink more Western style things.
Yes.
And nowadays, I think the old people, my age, my generation, still stick to tea, because we think tea make people healthy and not that strong. Some people say that when they drink tea, they can never get sleep.
Right.
I don't believe so. I can drink tea until very late. I can also sleep.
Yes.
Some people say that when you drink coffee, they can never sleep. So it all depends. Maybe some kind of addiction. When people get addiction, that means they eat more and more and stronger coffee or tea.
That's right. There are a lot of addicted Americans to coffee, that's for sure. Well, David, this has been really fascinating. For any of you people from the United States, you're probably familiar with a lot of the Chinese restaurants around here. And as I think you got a hint of, there's a lot more variety of food in China, and I highly recommend you check it out. So, David, thank you. This has been the second edition of What Do You Know About China? And next time we'll speak more about Chinese culture and history and politics. Thank you.
Thank you.